Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast. This is episode number 16 with Junior Peña. Really cool, fun conversation just with another fellow awesome higher ed geek. So I really appreciated his time and all that he shared about his journey and what he's into lately. So plug in for another awesome episode with a great professional and make sure to connect with him on Twitter because we share some really awesome stuff over there. So after this quick message, this is episode number 16 with Junior Peña. It's an honor to have our good friends at SwiftKick be a sponsor of the podcast because I've seen their work firsthand and it's truly unlike any student leadership training I've experienced. They've been voted Best Student Leadership Program unprecedented 5 times, so you know they must be doing something right. As a bonus for our listeners, SwiftKick is giving a $500 discount off their normal speaking fee if you mention Higher Ed Geek when you contact them. I highly recommend their trainings for your campus as your students will be talking about it for months afterwards. It's really great stuff. Check them out, swiftkick.hq.com to learn more and let them know I sent you. Now, back to the show. Get up to anything interesting over winter break?
Not really. I mean, I went actually back home to Massachusetts and it was really, really cold. And so, there wasn't like a whole lot. I mean, I had a blast. I had a lot of fun hanging out with my family, some of my friends from undergrad and some of those things. But, yeah, not a whole lot, other than that, because it was pretty cold. So everything that I wanted to do, was not ideal.
Yeah, because I lived in Maine for 2 years before I moved down here, like right outside of DC, and that was like winter would be like, just be like, oh, we could do that. Oh, no, it's too cold. I don't feel like, like it always just would be like the buzzkill for things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there certainly is, always a place for just kind of snuggling up and relaxing and just staying indoors and stuff. But because that's what my winter break ended up being a lot of anyway. Like I did have like a lot of just like random stuff of like, oh, I just want to like watch that show or like, read that book or play that game, like just stuff to just like take it easy, relax, and, not really have to venture out too much. But,
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, if you just want to start off the episode here, if you just want to introduce yourself to everyone, kind of give your professional journey and how you got to be where you are today.
For sure. So my name is Junior Peña. And I'm the assistant director currently at the University of Miami in our Office of Multicultural Student Affairs. And so I like to think that my professional trajectory and kind of journey is really oddly kind of linear in many ways. So I identify as a first generation college graduate. And so I did my undergraduate work at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, in psychology and communication. And while there, I was heavily involved, like a lot of other folks are. And so I was an orientation leader. I did a lot of work around social entrepreneurship and nonprofit/service work, which is actually where I really got, connected to the institution, really found a lot of love and passion through helping out with days of service, running alternative break trips, and really getting connected to the community in the greater Boston area. And I absolutely loved it, had a lot of fun. Never once thought about this as a career or potentially as something that I would see myself doing. But like many other folks, I had a mentor, Sherrod Williams, who was at the time the director of our Office of Student Leadership and Community Engagement. And he just basically said, like, I don't actually want you to consider this as a profession, but I think you should at least give it a shot as far as like testing out whether it's your vibe and it's for you. And so that's where he actually recommended the NASP Undergraduate Fellows Program. And so I went through the process just because I wanted to see what it was all about. I wanted to learn more about the profession and really make a informed decision around whether it's something that I could see myself doing. And so was accepted and was a part of the NASP Undergraduate Fellows cohort from 2012 to 2014. And through the program, really took advantage of every possible opportunity ever. I hustled a lot to get those scholarships to go to the conference. And some of those other pieces. And so I went to the national conference both years. I did Dungey Leadership Institute in the summer of 2013, and also was able through the program to intern at the University of Vermont and Northwestern University. And so after all of those culminating experiences, it was just like very evident that I absolutely could do this as a profession. And I understood what it is that I really valued and wanted to do moving forward. And it was support students like myself. And so as a result, pursued a master's degree at Florida State University and graduated in 2016 and have been here at the University of Miami since then. And absolutely loved my time at Florida State as well. I was the graduate assistant for our Center for Leadership and Social Change and worked on a lot of different projects, learned a lot as far as like my professional philosophy and ways of viewing the world. And I carry a lot of those lessons till this day. And so I'm very grateful for that learning process as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's like you said, sort of linear, you sort of, in a lot of ways, like a lot of people who find higher education, student affairs, and kind of whatever you want to kind of capture it as, like you sort of are scaffolded and built up to kind of find your place through other people and mentoring and just sort of, kind of articulating a bit more of like a vision and kind of a mission and those sort of things. And, I think, something I've broadened, especially now working in a different capacity within higher ed, is that like, it's certainly, for me, it's like where I found myself and my style and my voice and all that. And, I see myself staying within kind of the industry, for lack of a better term, at large. And, there's so many different ways that you can support, the higher education kind of realm. But what did your specific college experience give you, like personally and professionally? If it was, like a particular mentor that's continued on, or maybe there was just one experience or thing that you did, or anything that you can think of that was really like an impactful thing for you as you, are now beginning your career and everything.
For sure. Yeah. So actually, I'll kind of try to do a little bit of both. I tend to, digress in other ways and be tangential. But what I would say is the kind of biggest takeaway that I take, from my undergraduate experience is not to take anything for granted. And really what I mean by that is that there's just so many opportunities, so many experiences and, stories that you can take away from your time as an undergraduate student and as someone navigating college, because it's such a privilege. And I realized that as I navigated it. And so I think in particularly what made me kind of realize the amount of like privilege and just access to information that I was having was just seeing how much I had changed throughout each single year. And to be completely honest, and this is not even a lie to you. So I had mentioned initially that I was a first generation college student. And till this day, one of the stories that really connects with me and just tells me how much I've grown to where I'm at today is that the first class I ever took in college was Philosophy 101, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I'll never forget this because I walked up into this classroom, right? I had done my orientation. I was excited. I had also come from a background where college was totally not something I had ever even like remotely thought about doing, although I had really good grades. So it was just not something that ever came to mind. I went to a vocational high school and actually did auto body repair for a short period of time before pursuing college. And so that's ultimately what I thought I was going to be doing, right? And so now I'm here, I'm in Philosophy 101, and they're just doing roll call, right? Like it's the first day of classes. They're going through the syllabi. They're identifying what are going to be the goals and kind of learning outcomes of this class. And I'm conversing with some of the students, and I find out that not everyone in the classroom is a freshman, and I'm blown away. And I'm literally like, what? I'm in a classroom full of students from different credit and grades that they, identify with. How is this even possible? And it never even crossed my mind that would be a reality. And so now fast forward to where I'm at today, it's kind of wild to think about. But at that moment in time, I was just so oblivious to not only what kind of to expect within the context of college, but I think more importantly, just like how it all kind of worked. And I think that there's a huge assumption that we make about students that make it to that point just because they're capable and they're, informed and they're probably pretty intelligent, right? But at that point in time, I just didn't know any better. And so when I think about that development and I think about just how impactful a lot of student affairs professionals, looking at it in hindsight were in my development, I definitely think that one of the biggest things that I took away from my college experience was just don't take anything for granted. And as a result, I've been able to make, really, really meaningful relationships. I still have best friends that I talk to all the time from undergraduate. I go back and visit whenever I can and try to support the institution in any way that I can, just because I understood just how meaningful my time there was, and just how little I knew entering that particular sphere of my life.
Yeah, I think, and that's like a big thing for me that I maybe don't always think about or thought about at the time, whatever, but I know for sure now is just like, yeah, like the experience that I had in undergrad and being able to go to grad school and just like where my life is now, and like, you know, being able to travel a fair bit, and certainly, you know, like there's a lot that I haven't done and I look forward to doing, and I feel, I guess, sort of empowered to do, you know, whatever it is I might want to do. But just that idea, yeah, of kind of being very aware of just like, yeah, like I should be grateful to be here. This is a great experience. Let me make as much, you know, the most of it that I can, and almost just don't take things for granted. So, because yeah, like I'm first gen as well, and just like you just kind of enter into that space, I think very unique, and there's certainly stuff I wish I knew back then, but yeah, it's just like an interesting perspective to go in. And then certainly, yeah, I think a lot of those folks now who were just very grateful for the privilege to be able to go and have an amazing experience at college are the people who are, you know, saying like, yeah, I'd like to work in higher ed, you know, like I said, even for the short term, and you build up a lot of good skills and experience, and you go on to maybe whatever's else, but it's come on, it's like, yeah, I just want to pay it back for a little while, you know, like I just want to like sort of repay that debt that really, I guess, can never be paid back, but just sort of feel spiritually like, you know, I'd want to make sure there's some other folks that, you know, if I can play a hand in providing them the great experience that I had, you know, so yeah, it is, yeah, it's wild. Yeah, just sometimes those little things where it's just like you have these like revelations, and you're just like broadening your mind of just like, oh, I thought things were this way, and you know they are in fact a completely different way, and just allows you to be comfortable with kind of that ambiguity and stuff. Yeah.
And I think also because like one of the points that you brought up, that it's like literally a revelation I was having like last week, and it's this concept around like the type of people that are around us, right? And they always say that, you know, the people that you have around you and the company you keep is a reflection of the type of person you are, right? But I think even deeper than that is this conversation piece around like when you enter higher ed, you're around so many educated people, right? And it's something that we completely take for granted. And I try to remind myself of this, right? Is that our immediate networks and the people that I see on Twitter and engage with on Twitter regularly, or like on other social media outlets, a good majority of them are either already a, you know, master's graduate or pursuing a master's degree. And that to me is wild, right? Because when you look at a lot of other people's so immediate networks, right, and immediate spheres of influence, they do not have folks that are just so well educated, right? Formally educated anyways, right? And I think that it's something that we completely lose sight of. But if we remind ourselves of that, then we're more capable of like learning more about the people around us, right? Because there's so much experience in like storytelling and kind of learning that can happen when you're around people that have experienced so much within a short period of time, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. So like all the experience you've had have led you to be where you are now, and, you know, your current work. So I guess, you know, certainly, you know, multicultural sort of in diversity work, I think it can be difficult, because I think at the very least it's great when universities, you know, supported enough to like create centers and create staffing and have full-time attention on kind of that sort of programming and support and everything. But it can be difficult at times. You know, you may be having uncomfortable conversations with students, or just always trying to kind of stake your claim and prove, you know, why you deserve to exist and stuff. But so what is it that you enjoy personally, you know, about your professional work? You know, like what keeps you inspired to keep out that work? And yeah, just kind of what's the stuff that you enjoy most about your current job?
Yeah. And I really appreciate you kind of setting the tone in that, because I do think that there is like this kind of back and forth when you're in this realm of work around proving your value, and, you know, really getting into some type of work that might be a little bit easier to burn out at. And I will acknowledge, just for the sake of acknowledging, that at times it is more difficult than, you know, other times, and things of that nature. But what I would say that I enjoy the most about my work is actually being able to not only engage in those difficult conversations, but facilitate spaces where people can actually learn more about themselves. And so something that I always tell folks when it comes to diversity work and equity work in particular, I think that there's a lot of assumptions tied to it. I think a lot of people may not understand that it's for them, or may assume it's not for them, right? But it's for everyone, because when you facilitate a space that is intentional and focused on student learning and development around identity, then anyone can take away from that, because the very most like vital first point of contact and understanding when you're doing this kind of work is self-awareness. And I think that whenever we create spaces where students can learn a little bit more about themselves, but more importantly, how that understanding of themselves influences or looks like in relation to others, I think that that's where we start making those connection points. And even if you don't necessarily see it at that moment in time, even if that reflection doesn't take place right in front of you, they'll start to make those connections more organically. And they'll start to understand that as a result of me being this person with this set of experiences and lived realities and ways of viewing the world, I show up like this, but maybe this person shows up differently because of their experiences, however limited I know about what they are. You know what I mean? And so what I really, really enjoy about my work is being able to create spaces and opportunities for students to be able to learn a little bit more about themselves, and in turn what that means for the people around them, whether that's family members, other students, staff, professionals, and the like. And those are the moments that give me the most energy and like love and passion for the work that I do, is understanding that there are these just finite moments where students get it and it all kind of comes together, and they start to realize that, you know, their sense of self is really important. And not only that, but by honoring their own complexity and honoring their own sense of self, they can become more willing to allow other people to do the same, right? And to allow the grace and love to ensure that people understand that everyone is complex, right? And that those complex identities and collection of identities contribute to their sense of self as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's a really good way to put it. And it's almost just like it, you know, what you enjoy about it or what keeps you at it is the difficulty. And yeah, when you have that kind of like aha moment or kind of put everything together for a student and they kind of have, it's almost like a breakthrough. But yeah, it's just, like you said, almost like the equation of like greater self-awareness in with ourselves and knowing who we are and being comfortable with that, then equates to having more empathy and understanding towards other people and them having that same experience and, you know, allowing them to be, you know, whoever they choose to be. So yeah, it's shifting a little bit. So, you know, I remember just, thinking of guests for the podcast, I feel like you're somebody who kind of gets the higher ed geek thing. You're obviously very passionate about the work that you do, but I'm pretty sure there's some other stuff, you know, maybe just for fun that you geek out about. So, I guess what's stuff that's really grabbing your attention currently, and is it stuff that you're discovering, stuff that you've been into for a while? Just anything that you're kind of, you know, geeking out about right now.
Yeah, so there's a few things. So, and I actually I'm kind of like open about like, you know, things that I geek out about on Twitter whenever I get on there now these days and things of that nature. But so a few things. One is my Funko Pop collection. So I geek out about it pretty regularly, and I, you know, make sure I share it with our students, and our students now, you know, some of them come to the office to just check it out. And so my Funko Pops is basically like, they're like vinyl figures. I don't know if you know about them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I have like a pretty extensive collection that not only DC and Marvel characters, but also anime characters, because it's really what I spend most of my time like watching outside of work. And so, and I know we'll touch upon this, you know, after like later on in the podcast, but I love geeking out about, you know, not only collecting and getting some exclusive vinyl figures, but also making sure that I, oddly enough, connected to my work in a way that the way that it kind of came to be and started was that I wanted to get diverse representation of like superheroes and these, you know, really big movie and TV characters that students can really connect with and resonate with, but may not always see, you know, their representation. And so it really started as like I got Katana to really connect with like the Asian American population and really be able to represent that within the context of superheroes, because she's like one of the few heroes that they ever highlight in any kind of like show that can resonate with the population. I did the same thing with the John Stewart Green Lantern, and a multitude of other characters that I felt, you know, really represented the diverse perspective and outlook of our students. And so I started collecting them. Now it's become a whole thing. And in all honesty, it's something that I geek out about all the time, because whenever I see like a show or a character that I really, really like, I'll, try to make a game plan to acquire that figure. And I would say along with that, just the whole kind of, I would say shift. Like, I think we've gotten back to a place where it's actually really cool to enjoy things like superhero movies and cartoons, and how big and, kind of controversial Star Wars has been. So I'm a fan as well. And this really all started for me as a young kid. I used to always watch the shows, not as much read the comics, but I do for kind of like big events that really kind of connect to my interests. I'll read the comics themselves. And yeah, so I've really been geeking out about that kind of stuff lately. And it allows me to really not think about work and all of the stressful kind of, politics that are happening within our current context. So I watch a lot of the shows, collect the vinyl figures, and I also read a lot of like manga and some of those different mediums as well.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, like I love Funko Pops, and I give them a lot as gifts to people, and yeah, I have a bunch at my desk, and don't know why I got into them originally, but I think they're just like a good way to like scratch sort of like a collector itch, or just sort of like have a cool way to represent different characters that you're into. But I hadn't like, I posted a picture of my desk one time, just like, oh, look at all my Funko Pops, and like somebody like called me out and just like, oh, you don't really have any like female character, like you just kind of have all these like white dudes and stuff. And I was like, like, well, no, like I am into like other characters, but it is just so easy to kind of default to that. And yeah, it's great to hear that like you were sort of thinking of that as well. So yeah, like I got like Mace Windu, and yeah, I got like the Jon Stewart Green Lantern, and
you got Mace Windu? That's freaking cool,
yeah,
man.
I like hunted him down. But yeah, and like Rey from Star Wars, and Spider-Gwen, and like there's these characters that like I've explored and I enjoy, and like I just was that idea of just like, yeah, I should have like other characters. Like it is just the majority of the ones that are offered, it's super easy just to get kind of stuck with a bunch of white dudes. So it's like, okay, yeah, who do I like that's different? And like just making sure that like, yeah, if somebody were to walk by my desk, they see just this diverse array of characters and stuff. And it is just we're certainly in a renaissance now. I think there's a lot of that coming down the pipeline of diverse superheroes, and then certainly just a lot of that kind of content of exploring power and responsibility and teamwork and those sort of things within the genre. I think it's definitely evolving, but yeah, it's definitely right there with you of kind of having a healthy diet of all the geeky stuff, comics and TV and all that. But I guess you mentioned it obviously just being like a good escape and like a good release. I guess, is there any like kind of like community or bonds or just anything else, just like as you've grown up with any like geeky stuff, just like how have these hobbies and interests positively contributed to your life, you feel?
For sure. I have like, it's funny because like I have like a whole community of people that are also in higher ed that really like this stuff. And so I think about like Jack Naismith and Kirby Gibson, Atia McGee, and some of these other folks that are openly discussing these kind of, conversation points and sharing recommendations and things of that nature. And I'll regularly hit up somebody and just say like, oh, right now I'm looking for a new show, or I'm looking for, something new to read. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, feel free to send me some recommendations. And so I think it's been good because like I mentioned, I definitely use it as an outlet. And it's also like a huge positive to be able to reach out to other folks that are into these different topic areas and different, types of shows and areas of reading that, that just kind of like allow for you to really build community with one another, talk about these things in a space where you feel like you don't necessarily have to do as much explaining or catching people up to speed on what it is you're actually talking about, right? They just kind of know. And as a result, you can really just, literally geek out together and talk about some of the revelations, like movie trailers that have been released and some of those other things. So yeah, I'm a big fan of just being able to say that, like these different hobbies and areas of interest are just ways of me staying connected to the community in different ways, and really looking beyond just what people do, right? Because that's kind of like something I'm really, really big on is this concept of storytelling and understanding where people are coming from a little bit further than what the superficial kind of surface level conversations lead to. And so I think it's just another nature or area where you can really delve further and understand why people really like it, and it's kind of some of the things that you mentioned as far as like, conflict resolution and, teamwork and really just the cool designs altogether that just kind of remind you to, never be too adult to the point where you lose sight of like the things you just enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Because some of the stuff, it's like, okay, this is like clearly meant for children, but it's like there's really like a good heart and a good core to it. So yeah, and then it's just fun. But then like I think the genre is just continuing to mature with the fans. Like I think a lot of the movies and television, sort of superhero properties and stuff, I think are definitely doing some interesting stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely kind of fits in with like a good sort of I think like moral compass, or like I always joke just like that I take my entertainment very seriously, so like I wanted to have a little bit more substance and stuff. So I think thankfully we're getting a lot more of that substance with kind of the current superhero and comic book genre. But yeah, I mean, so anything specific, I guess, that perhaps like current favorites, all-time favorites, stuff that you're reading, watching, and or listening to that you would like to just mention, we can include in the show notes.
For sure. So reading wise, I'm actually kind of so I actually read pretty often, and a lot of it tends to be kind of really diverse sets of reading. But right now, I'm on a huge kind of Audre Lorde conversation piece. Huge feminist writer, particularly talking about women of color experience and talking about just the power and kind of resolve needed to really come to terms with your feelings, your sense of self, and how that can really create like a huge shift for you as a person, how you see yourself and the people you keep around you. And so I've been reading a lot of actually really recently a lot of feminist kind of writing and books, but specifically I'm reading right now Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde, which is an anthology and a collection of some of her thoughts, experiences, and speeches and interviews, and just really good stuff around not only writing and coming to terms with your identity and some of these other pieces, but also just an understanding more about an experience that I cannot specifically align myself with as far as like my collection of identities, right? So I think that particularly women of color, and if we think about trans women of color and some of the women of color within the LGBTQ community, those are some of the most kind of openly oppressed and discriminated against populations within our entire society. And so really just trying to learn ways to not only read and understand to some extent that reality, but find ways that we can create spaces where that learning and growing within our role here at the University of Miami can continually happen for women of color specifically. And so I've really been reading a lot about that lately. I'm excited to be afterwards focusing on reading a little bit more about my own personal kind of development. And I'll be reading a book, kind of like a history book, but also kind of a collection of ideas and philosophies on the Dominican Republic, because it's actually where I grew, where I was born was the Dominican Republic, grew up in Massachusetts. And so learning more about the country's history, learning more about the racial undertones and dynamics that were created through colonialism and some of these other pieces. And so the reading has gotten progressively more heavy for me this year, but I really wanted to take my personal reading time to focus on identity-specific things that I could really learn not only about myself, but ways to create spaces for other people to thrive and learn together as well.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've heard of a lot of folks doing that, like really putting deliberate energy to be like, let me read things that I would not normally read things from different authors from different backgrounds, and certainly in our current political climate, I think it just is like, I think it's sometimes it's like I see the people and it's like, you're already an awesome person, like, stop being even more awesome. I feel like there's other people that need to be doing that like lack the empathy, like they should be like reading stories from people to learn more about their experiences and be more caring and considerate. But it's just like it's just really cool, because I think at the very least it's like these are great authors and storytellers who, like, these stories should be heard, and like we should engage with them more and share them out and all of that. But I definitely I feel like it seems like, yeah, your reading is kind of filling in, a bit more of like kind of like professional development and just obviously personal fulfillment of kind of exploring those different identities and everything. And then like, if other things, if it's like, oh, I watch a lot of stuff that's more just like fun. And if you're like listening listening to podcasts or something, or just listening to music, whatever, like it kind of fits into different pegs versus just like, I mean, certainly people's like, entertainment, reading, watching, listening stuff could all just be like, I just need to unplug. I just need to not think about stuff. But, I think, like I listen to a lot of podcasts that are always just like thoughtful stuff of just like, oh, that's like an interesting thing. Never thought of that. And just like kind of helps me like generate ideas and stuff. But, I guess, is there anything else, like anything that you would want to like, specifically mention, anything reading, watching, listening to, I guess, because, I think certainly on the general point of like inspiration to like with all this stuff, like get out of your comfort zone a little bit, if there's anything here that you've not even heard of or thought of, go check it out. But anything else specific, I guess, that, in the different platforms that you are consuming?
So reading, I've been going heavy, right? But I would say like up until this point, I really used reading as more of like self-motivation readings, right? So like I would always buy those like self-development books. But like watching for me, and this is so contradictory to what a lot of people do, right? But like whenever I watch anything, I really don't actually want to think all that much, right? Like I undoubtedly will identify some things that will make me think a little bit further about it. So like I actually am pretty intentional about doing shows that are not all that intensive, right? So like right now I'm watching mainly anime. So like One Piece, I don't know if you've heard of One Piece, but One Piece is like my main jewel. So I fully caught up. I read the manga. I'm very invested in the show. Love the storytelling, love where it's going. I think it's just really good. I love the characters. And that's like one of the mainstays of my viewing. I'm also watching another anime called Code Geass, and I really got it through a recommendation from a friend. And it's like really, really good. If you're into kind of like strategic kind of shows, it's huge. It's got a lot of action. The pacing is really fast, which I appreciate. And you really see like this huge development of characters in such a short period of time. So I've been a fan of that. I'm almost done with the first season. And have really been, watching that whenever I have like that free time. And so those would be like the main two shows that I've been allocating time towards watching lately. And then listening to, I honestly go on Spotify a lot, oftentimes, and just listen to like different podcasts. The other day I was listening to a podcast about animal intelligence and, humans' assumption of animal intelligence in particular, and how we oftentimes think that, animals aren't as intelligent as they really are. So that was interesting. And I would say along with that, I listen to a lot of music. So lots and lots of music. And I make it a personal goal of mine to listen to like a different type of genre, like at least once a week. And what I mean by that is like usually like a different country's genre. So I've done a lot of J-pop, K-pop, J-rap, and some of these other things. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's very, very worldly, and continuing that trend of yours, which is really great. And yeah, I mean, it's just awesome. There's so much of this kind of different stuff at our fingertips. So it's like, whatever you want to consume, it is all there. But yeah, we'll definitely link out to some of the stuff in the show notes there. But yeah, just to wrap up this episode, to end things on an optimistic note. So, what are you looking forward to in your job, in life, in the world? Just anything you can think of that kind of keeping you excited, keeping you looking forward, and they're just looking forward to.
Yeah. And so I want to leave this as a message and a challenge and urge to other people to remind themselves of this as well. So something that I always tell people, and something that I remind myself of regularly, is three things. And no matter like when I think about what I look forward to in my job, my life, my world moving forward, when I think about my career development, all that I look for is three things. And one of those is be happy. So I look for environments, places, spaces, opportunities that I know will genuinely provide an opportunity to just genuinely be happy with where I'm at, happy with the things and opportunities that I'm creating. I think along with that is fulfilling work. And so being happy, having fulfilling work, so work that allows for me to feel like I'm contributing to something beyond myself, and contributing to a society beyond myself with a better outlook or perspective. And then the third is having people around me that are just awesome. And so it's something that I'm very intentional about, and something that I always look for is to ensure that the community that I curate, the people around me, are just good people. And I think if you have those three things, something that can provide you with a sense of happiness, something that can provide you with a sense of fulfillment, and a community of people that can provide you with a little bit of everything, then you'll be good. So those are the three things that I'm looking forward to the most, and hopefully continually providing and having an opportunity to get those in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I love it. Yeah, it's a great way to end it, and just sort of kind of generally get people thinking, I hope. And because it's like, yeah, obviously you would get a lot from those things, but I think can give back to community, and sort of like that energy can be kind of cyclical if you're, kind of happy and fulfilled and sort of just kind of zen, like I said. It's always kind of my, what I'm striving for is just to be like, okay, just like being where you are, like being with the people that you are with, and kind of good vibes, and just sort of, it all kind of like feeding in and kind of looping around. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's something to strive towards, but something to also just sort of like continue to nurture, and sort of like, again, just sort of kind of have that symbiotic thing where you're kind of giving back and kind of getting energy and positivity from the people around you, and kind of giving that positivity back, and just I think certainly, all the things that you mentioned, just kind of opening yourself up to other people's experiences and stories and stuff, is just going to create the empathy and just kind of understanding to allow for that to kind of grow. So yeah, all really great stuff. Really appreciate you speaking about your path and the things that you're into right now, and just really appreciate your enthusiasm, and appreciate your kind of making time for this episode and sharing all that you did. So we'll definitely have ways for folks to connect with you in the show notes. So yeah, again, thanks, and just have a good rest of your day.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me, Dustin. I appreciate it.
This podcast is a proud member of the ConnectEDU Podcast Network, bringing together diverse voices and thoughtful discussions to the higher ed community. Check us out online at connectedu.network or on Twitter at ConnectEDUPod. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast.